Sentence level editing tips. It may not sound like something that's exciting or something that you really, really want to spend a lot of time on. So I promise you we won't spend a lot of time on this, but I think it's really important, especially as you continue to revise your writing, to really think about the sentence as your messenger of ideas. And if there's an issue with the sentence, if it's not complete, for instance, if it doesn't carry the weight of your ideas, it can really make the whole composition fall apart bit by bit. So let's talk about the sentence. So in terms of sentence level clarity, there's 4 types of sentences, and I'm going to briefly review those with you just so you have a clear sense of what a complete sentence is and the types of sentences that complete sentences are. So let's start with the very basics. Complete sentences always contain a subject and a predicate. Predicates you might know as verb clauses. And so, for instance, if you were to say, Professor Thornton enjoys going to spin class 3 times a week, you have a clear subject, that's Professor Thornton, and then the clear verb or predicate is enjoys going. So you know right there that there is a person, place, or thing. Sometimes a gerund, like running, can be a subject sometimes as well. But you have a clear subject and you have a clear verb action within that particular sentence, including the object of where I'm enjoying going as well. If I just wrote Professor Thornton enjoys going, that would be an incomplete sentence. So there are some other elements that make that complete sentence as well. Another example of a complete sentence is I'm reading a book currently and it's called The Devil in the White City. So another complete sentence might look like The Devil in the White City is a particularly quick read. The subject is the title of the book, The Devil in the White City. Is the linking verb that definitely links this idea to the object of being a particularly quick read. So this is what a complete sentence looks like. And you want to make sure that your sentences that are in your compositions, in your writing, have a clear subject and a predicate. So that's the first step. The second step is a lot of you write in compound sentences, and you may or may not know that compound sentences are created by 2 main clauses and a coordinating conjunction. And before your eyes glaze over and you go, oh my gosh, grammar, let's just stop and pause for a minute. And I want to give you a really quick acronym. It's called FANBOYS. And FANBOYS include coordinating conjunctions such as for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And if you take the first letter of each of these coordinating conjunctions, it spells fanboys. So it's a nice little mnemonic device that helps you, actually remember what these coordinating conjunctions might be. So a compound sentence actually consists of 2 or more main clauses and then no subordinate clause. And we'll talk about what that is in a minute. But let's look for right now at the sample sentence. Writing essay 1 was challenging, but I believe my final draft will demonstrate my hard work. So we see here that writing essay 1 was challenging is 1 main clause. The second main clause is, I believe my final draft will demonstrate my hard work. The coordinating conjunction that links these 2 main clauses is the coordinating conjunction of but. So one of those fanboys. A lot of times I see students that don't necessarily know how to use commas because they'll just put commas before any coordinating conjunction they see. So you might say, I like chocolate and vanilla. You wouldn't put a comma before that and because it's not linking 2 main clauses like it is in this example. So in addition to sentence level clarity, I think once you understand what a sentence is and how it functions, it'll often help you with a lot of those persistent and nagging punctuation issues a lot of you talked with me about. Let's talk about the third type of sentence, and it's a complex sentence. And these complex sentences consist of 1 or more main clause, usually just 1 main clause rather, and 1 or more subordinate clauses. And we're going to get to what that is. One of the reasons why I really think it's important to know how to identify and write a complex sentence is that these types of sentences show the reader that you have an ability to represent more complex ideas rather than Jane hits the ball. The ball landed in the yard. When you start writing in a bunch of simple sentences, it sounds very halting and very like primary grade level. So when you have complex sentences, it actually allows you to have some more sentence variety. So let's look at the sample sentence. While I love sleeping in, comma, every weekday morning at 6 a.m. I wake up to get ready for work. So the subordinate clause is the one that begins with while. And one of the things that you'll know with subordinate clauses is that there are a list of words that actually trigger you, that are subordinating conjunctions, that let you know this is not a complete clause. Like this is something that is a dependent clause. The main clause, it stands alone. You wouldn't necessarily need to have while I love sleeping in, but you could definitely say that every weekday morning at 6 a.m. I wake up to get ready for work is a complete sentence because you have a clear subject and a clear predicate. When you have subordinate clauses, like, for instance, while I love sleeping in, you do need to set those off with commas. And so for many of you, if you see words such as after, although, as, because, before, even if, even though, if it's part of that subordinate clause, you'll want to go ahead and use that comma to set it off. What you don't want to do, and I've seen people do this as well in their writing, is just because they see the word because, they'll put a comma before that. And that's not necessarily accurate either. Because is often used to show causality. So for instance, I woke up late because I forgot to set my alarm. You're not going to be putting a comma before that because in that instance. But if you wrote, because I forgot to set my alarm, I woke up late, you would definitely put a comma after because I forgot to set my alarm. So I think it's important for you to keep that in mind, is that there are a list of subordinate conjunctions that if you're using these in your writing, these types of words, that you make sure that you have a subordinate conjunction that might be in a subordinate clause set off from the main clause or the independent clause. If you're getting a little claused crazy here, just take a deep breath and know that you can always rewatch this and rewind it. You also, just so you know, have lots of different pages in your LB brief that will help you with sentence structure as well. So our last and our final type of sentence is a compound complex sentence. And this is really where you take your knowledge of what a compound sentence is and fuse it together with a complex sentence. So the compound sentence is when we use that coordinating conjunction, right, to link two main clauses. And the complex sentence is when we used a subordinating clause, so using something like while or because or whenever or although. You're using that subordinating clause that's linked to a main clause. So let's look at this. This is the most complex type of sentence, and this is where, especially for many of you, your punctuation issues might just come to a crazy head. So in the sentence below, it says, when the government shutdown finally ended, comma, and we know this is a subordinate clause because it begins with the subordinating conjunction of when. So anytime you see those words, when or while or although or wherever, that's a really good indication that you're dealing with a subordinate clause. So when the government shutdown finally ended, comma, many government employees were relieved so they could finally I think we see a typo here, so they could finally resume work and get paid. So there should be a get that's not there. See, even your English teacher makes mistakes. I'm human. But I think the thing to keep in mind, the main clause, many government employees were relieved. That is a standalone complete sentence. So you could definitely do that as well. And then the other complete standalone sentence would be, especially if you got rid of that get that's right there, they could finally resume work and get paid. The coordinating conjunction of so, and you'll see that it's linking relieved, so they, that's the example of where you see the compound sentence. So that's really important to note as well. So let's talk about one of my favorite issues in terms of how you can really dramatically improve your sentence level structure. Sentence fragments. Whew. I'm sure a lot of you have heard from me and from other English teachers that you may use these. And so here's what you need to know about sentence fragments. And we really couldn't get into this point until you understood what a complete sentence is and the four types of sentences. So there's simple sentences, just to review. There's compound sentences, there's complex sentences, and there are compound complex sentences. And so keep this in mind. There might be a quiz at some point. But you have to know this. A complete sentence contains a subject and a predicate. For instance, the car zooms. There is no subordinate clause that's in it, just if you're starting with it. So beginning with because or who or although or whenever. And this is when the trouble starts arising. This is when the dreaded sentence fragment happens. Sentence fragments lack a predicate, so instead of saying the car zooms, you say the car zooming. So it doesn't really make sense because there is no clear predicate. You're using a gerund, zooming. Or it lacks a subject, for instance, zoom. You just say, and zoom. Well, what's zooming? Who's zooming? You need a subject of something or some kind that's doing the action. And then sentence fragments often include subordinate clauses that are not attached to complete sentences. Because the car zooms. Well, why does the car zoom? And how does the car zoom? Because the car zoom doesn't really make sense. If you said the car zooms because there is an awesome engine inside of it, that would be a complete main clause or, independent clause. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. That's really important to know what a sentence fragment is. So how do you fix this? You know that this is an issue. You know that maybe sentence level errors are something that plague you. You've been told your whole life, or perhaps again and again, that you write in fragments. Here are a couple ways, according to your LB brief, that you can help fix this problem. First, look at your sentences. Really look at them and make sure that you can find in each sentence a predicate, that there is some kind of action being done, and it's not just a gerund like zooming or running or playing. Make sure that it's actually modifying the subject in the appropriate manner. Second thing, find the subject. If you can't figure out who's doing the action or to whom the action is being done, there's a problem, and that means that you may have a sentence that is not complete and that is potentially a fragment. Also, make sure that the clause is not subordinate. If you just have, although I am hungry, and you think that is a sentence, that is actually a subordinating clause. It's a subordinate clause, so it's not going to be a complete sentence. Although I was hungry is incomplete. It does not make sense. It's a fragment. And then one way to be able to revise sentence fragments, there's two strategies that are shared in your LB brief on page 288. Make sure that as you're revising your work that you're looking to the LB brief for some of the really easy, hands-on ways to fix the sentence level issues in your writing. So with that, best of luck with the revisions that you're working on this week, and keep thinking about how your sentence is the messenger of your ideas. You want to make sure that your sentences are lean, they're complete, and that they are very much varied. You don't want to write a whole bunch of simple sentences to the exclusion of having compound sentences or compound complex or complex sentences. So change it up a little bit. You wouldn't wear the same outfit every day, so don't write with the same style of sentence every time too. Best of luck. Happy writing.